The transport shuttle's engines hummed their final note as Captain Ethan Cross stepped onto the crystalline landing platform of Valdris Prime. The twin suns cast ethereal shadows through the planet's atmospheric dome, painting everything in hues of amber and rose. 6 months had passed since the Xerion conflict ended, but the weight of those battles still pressed against his shoulders like invisible armor. Captain Cross. Chancellor Vorik approached with measured steps, his elongated, Valdrian frame draped in ceremonial robes that shimmered with each movement. The Imperial Council awaits your presence. Ethan adjusted his diplomatic uniform, crisp navy with subtle gold threading that caught the alien sunlight. Chancellor, I have to ask, why me? There are dozens of qualified mediators who could handle succession negotiations. Vorik's silver eyes, characteristic of the Valdrian nobility, studied him with an intensity that made humans uncomfortable. Because, Captain, you are the only outsider who earned the trust of both houses during the war. And, he paused, because they specifically requested you. They? Princesses Kira and Mira, the last viable heirs to the Valdrian throne. The names hit Ethan like plasma fire. Images flashed through his mind. Kira's fierce smile as she pulled him from burning wreckage, Mira's gentle hands tending his wounds in a makeshift medical bay. Both women had been his allies, his confidants, He pushed the memories aside. The palace corridors stretched endlessly, their walls embedded with living crystal that pulsed with soft bioluminescence. Valdrian architecture had always amazed him, organic curves that seemed grown rather than built, spaces that breathed with their inhabitants' emotions. The situation is delicate, Vorik continued as they walked. Without a clear succession, our noble houses grow restless. House Solwyn commands the military loyalty. House Nightfall controls the trade networks and diplomatic corps. Both princesses have equal claim to the throne, but our ancient laws state that only one may rule. They entered the throne room, a vast space dominated by the eternal seat, carved from a single piece of starjade that seemed to contain entire galaxies within its depths. But Ethan's attention was immediately drawn to the two figures standing before it. Princess Kira of House Solwyn stood with military bearing, her warriors, physique evident even beneath formal court attire. Her midnight hair was braided with silver threads, and her violet eyes, so different from the common Valdrian silver, held the same fierce intelligence he remembered from the battlefield. When she saw him, her composed expression cracked slightly, revealing warmth that made his chest tighten. Princess Mira of House Nightfall was her sister's opposite in appearance but equal in presence. Taller and more slender, with hair like spun gold and eyes that shifted between blue and green depending on the light, she possessed an ethereal beauty that masked a razor-sharp mind. She stepped forward first. Ethan. His human name sounded like music in her melodic voice. You came. Did you doubt I would? He moved toward them, acutely aware of the dozen council members watching every gesture, every expression. Kira's smile was smaller but no less impactful. We hoped, but hope and certainty are different creatures entirely. Chancellor Vorik cleared his throat. Captain Cross, the Imperial Council has invoked the ancient right of unification. In times of unclear succession, an outsider of proven honor may choose the next ruler through marriage bond. Your choice will determine not only the next empress, but the future of our civilization. The words hit him like a gravitational wave. Marriage. Choose. The implications crashed over him as he looked between the two women, both brilliant, both brave, both impossibly dear to him in ways that went far beyond friendship or alliance. You're asking me to choose between them, he said quietly. The law is clear, Vorik replied. One bride, one empress, one future. But as Ethan met each sister's gaze, he saw something the council didn't. Pain, not at the prospect of losing power, but of losing each other, and losing him. This was going to be more complicated than any war he'd ever fought. The council chamber fell silent after Chancellor Vorik's pronouncement, but Ethan's mind thundered with memories. How had he ended up here, caught between two hearts he'd never intended to capture? 3 years earlier, Zarion Sector. The siege of Outpost 7 had lasted 18 brutal days. Ethan, then a lieutenant colonel leading the human peacekeeping forces, crouched behind twisted metal as enemy plasma bolts scorched the air above him. His comm unit crackled with static. Reinforcements were still hours away, and his position was being overrun. Human this way. A voice cut through the chaos. Princess Kira of House Solwind vaulted over debris with inhuman grace, her ceremonial armor replaced by practical combat gear. She extended a gauntleted hand. Unless you prefer becoming plasma residue. He'd grabbed her hand and she'd pulled him through a maze of collapsing corridors to a hidden bunker. There, pressed together in the darkness while explosions shook, dust from the ceiling, they'd shared their first real conversation. "Why save me?" he'd asked, acutely aware of her warmth against his side. "Because," she'd said, her violet eyes reflecting the emergency lighting. "You're the first outsider who didn't look at me and see only a weapon to be aimed." Her fingers had found his in the darkness. "You see me." That night, as they waited for rescue, she'd told him about the weight of expectations, the loneliness of command, the dreams she harbored beyond warfare. When dawn broke and the fighting resumed, something had fundamentally shifted between them. 6 months later, the diplomatic summit on Kepler Station, the assassination attempt came during the peace negotiations. A neural disruptor, designed to look like an accident. Ethan would have simply collapsed during his speech, another human casualty of alien technology incompatibility. He never would have known what hit him. Princess Mira's hand on his shoulder had stopped him mid-step toward the podium. "Don't," she'd whispered urgently. "Trust me." She'd led him through service corridors to her private quarters, explaining breathlessly how she'd intercepted coded communications, decoded the plot, identified the weapon. Her scholarly brilliance had literally saved his life. "Why warn me?" he'd asked as they stood in her chambers, adrenaline making them both shake slightly. "Because you listen," she'd said simply. "In all those negotiation sessions, you actually heard what I was trying to say about economic integration, about cultural preservation. Others see House Nightfall as manipulative politicians. You see the dreams we're trying to protect." That night she'd shown him Valdrian poetry, shared her visions for a unified galaxy built on understanding rather than conquest. He'd found himself, drawn not just to her beauty, but to the passionate mind behind those shifting eyes. When she'd kissed him, soft, tentative, hopeful, he'd kissed her back with an intensity that surprised them both. Present day. "You're both thinking very loudly," Mira observed, her diplomatic training allowing her to read the emotional undercurrents in the room. The three of them had been granted private quarters to discuss the situation, though everyone knew the council expected a quick decision. Ethan sat heavily in a chair carved from living wood that adjusted to support him perfectly. "I'm thinking about how we got here, about choices that seemed clear at the time." Kira moved to the window, her warrior's instincts making her survey potential escape routes even in peaceful settings. The war made many things seem simpler than they were. Fight the enemy, protect the innocent, survive another day. She turned back to face him. "But this isn't simple at all," Ethan finished. Mira settled onto a cushioned bench, her formal court dress pooling around her like liquid starlight. "Tell me honestly, Ethan, during the war did you—" She gestured helplessly. "I mean, I thought I sensed something between us, but I could never be certain. Your human emotions are difficult for us to read clearly." The question hung in the air like a live wire. Ethan looked between them. Kira's proud stance couldn't hide the vulnerability in her eyes, while Mira's scholarly composure cracked to reveal raw hope and fear. "I cared for both of you," he said carefully, "more than I should have given the circumstances, more than I admitted to myself at the time." Kira's laugh held no humor. "And now they're asking you to choose which of those feelings was real and which was just, what, battlefield camaraderie, political convenience?" They're asking me to decide which of you gets to live the life you were born for, and which gets exiled to obscurity, Ethan said, his voice rough with emotion. As if your worth could be measured by my preference. Mira rose and moved closer, close enough that he could smell the subtle floral scent she wore. What if the choice isn't as impossible as it seems? What do you mean? She exchanged a look with her sister, a complex communication that spoke of shared secrets. Kira and I have been talking. Really talking. For the first time. Since childhood. Despite our house's rivalry, despite the political pressures, we don't want to lose each other. And we don't want to lose you. Kira joined them, creating a small circle of intensity in the vast chamber. The council sees this as a political solution wrapped in romantic ceremony. But for us it's about family, Mira continued. About love that doesn't follow traditional boundaries. Ethan felt his heart racing as understanding dawned. You're suggesting... We're not suggesting anything yet, Kira said firmly. We're just saying that maybe the ancient laws don't account for every possibility. Maybe there's a fourth option no one has considered. Outside, the twin suns began to set, painting the chamber in deeper shades of rose and gold. Tomorrow, the council would expect his decision. But tonight, for the first time since arriving on Valdris Prime, Ethan allowed himself to hope that breaking hearts might not be inevitable after all. Dawn on Valdris Prime brought no relief from the impossible decision weighing on Ethan's mind. He'd spent the night pacing his guest quarters, the living walls pulsing gently in response to his agitation. The brief hope sparked by the sisters' cryptic words had faded into cold reality. Ancient laws weren't easily changed, and the Valdrian Empire's survival hung in the balance. A soft chime announced a visitor. Chancellor Vorik entered, carrying an ornate case inlaid with precious metals. Captain Cross, the Imperial Council requires your understanding of our sacred traditions. He set the case on the crystalline table that formed from the floor at his gesture. These are the Codex Imperialis, the laws that have governed succession for 3 millennia. Ethan accepted the ancient texts, their pages made from treated crystal that glowed faintly at his touch. The weight felt immense, not from mass, but from accumulated authority. The rite of unification was created after the Schism Wars, Vorik explained, his silver eyes reflecting deep history. 2 princes once split our empire in half, fighting over the same throne. Millions died. The survivors vowed never again would dual claims tear us apart. He paused meaningfully. The chosen bride becomes empress. The other faces immediate exile to prevent future conflict. Exile, Ethan repeated, the word tasting bitter. Not just losing the throne, but losing everything. Everything, Vorik confirmed. Home, family, citizenship. It ensures no lingering loyalty can challenge the unified rule. After the Chancellor departed, Ethan tried to focus on the texts, but the archaic symbols swam before his eyes. How could he condemn either woman to such a fate? A gentle knock interrupted his struggles. Come in. Kira entered, no longer in formal court attire but wearing a simple training outfit that highlighted her athletic build. Without the ceremonial trappings, she looked younger, more approachable. I thought you might want to see the real Valdris, she said, gesturing toward the window. Beyond the palace politics. They walked through gardens that defied earth botany, trees with silver bark and leaves that sang in harmonious frequencies, flowers that shifted color based on the emotional resonance of nearby beings. The beauty was overwhelming, alien, yet somehow familiar. When I was young, Kira said as they settled beside a fountain whose water flowed upward in impossible spirals, I dreamed of exploring the galaxy, fighting alongside different species, learning their ways of war and peace. She smiled sadly. How Solwyn's princess doesn't get to choose her own adventures. But you chose to fight in the war, Ethan pointed out. Duty chose for me. But you... She turned to face him fully. You made me remember that I had dreams beyond duty. When we were trapped in that bunker, when you listened to me talk about wanting to see other worlds, you didn't tell me it was impossible. You said maybe, someday we could explore them together. The memory hit him like a physical blow. Her face in the emergency lighting, hope and longing mixing in her violet eyes as she'd spoken of stars she'd never seen. "Kira, I'm not asking for promises," she said quickly. "I'm asking you to know that whatever choice you make, I'll understand. My sister deserves happiness too. But I needed you to know that my feelings, they're real. They're not political strategy or desperate grasping for power." She kissed his cheek, soft, warm, achingly tender, before walking away. That evening, Mira found him in the archive chambers, surrounded by holographic displays of galactic trade routes and cultural exchange programs. "Researching the Empire's future?" she asked, settling beside him with fluid grace, trying to understand what I'd be choosing between. "Your sister showed me her dreams. What are yours?" Mira gestured at the displays, her eyes lighting with passion. "Unity without uniformity. A galaxy where different species maintain their unique cultures while sharing knowledge, resources, hope." She pulled up a simulation showing educational exchanges, joint research projects, collaborative art installations. House Nightfall has always believed that diversity strengthens rather than weakens. "It's beautiful," Ethan said honestly. "But how does choosing you as Empress make this happen?" "Because I've been secretly working with Kira to develop these programs," she admitted. "The Council thinks our houses are rivals, but we've been collaborating for months. We realized that together, we could achieve what neither could alone." Ethan stared at her. "You've been working together? But the political pressure, the rivalry, performance," Mira said simply. "We let the Council think we're competing because they expect it. But Kira's military connections and my diplomatic networks? Combined, they could reshape the galaxy." She moved closer, close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her shifting eyes. "That night on Kepler Station, when I showed you my poetry, you said something I'll never forget. You said that love, real love, creates rather than consumes. It builds bridges instead of walls." Her hand found his, fingers intertwining. "I love you, Ethan, but I also love my sister. And I think maybe the three of us could build something together that none of us could achieve alone." The implications of her words sent electricity through him. "Mira, what exactly are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "that tomorrow, when you stand before the Council, you remember that laws written 3,000 years ago might not account for every possibility." She kissed him then, not the gentle kiss from Kepler Station, but something deeper, more urgent. When they broke apart, her eyes held a mix of love, determination, and revolutionary hope. "Sleep well, Ethan. Tomorrow changes everything." As he lay in bed that night, Ethan realized the sisters were right about one thing. There were possibilities the ancient laws had never considered. The question was whether he had the courage to embrace them. The Imperial Council convened at dawn, their ceremonial robes creating a sea of shifting colors in the vast chamber. Ethan stood before the eternal seat, acutely aware that his decision would reshape not just 3 lives, but an entire civilization. Chancellor Vorik called for order as representatives from dozens of noble houses took their positions. "Before Captain Cross announces his choice," Vorik declared, "the houses shall present their cases." Lord Commander Thane of House Solwyn stepped forward, his battle-scarred features stern with authority. "Princess Kira has led our forces to victory in 17 campaigns. Her strength unites the military houses. She is the warrior empress. Our enemies will fear and our people will follow into any battle." Lady Diplomat Sarah of House Nightfall countered smoothly. "Princess Mira has negotiated 43 trade agreements and prevented 6 potential conflicts through pure diplomacy. Her wisdom unites the scholarly houses. She is the peacemaker our fractured galaxy desperately needs." As the formal presentations continued, Ethan caught subtle glances between the sisters. They sat in separate sections as protocol demanded, but he could see the tension in their postures, the barely concealed communication in their expressions. "The captain will now retire for final deliberation," Vorik announced. "The choice shall, be declared at sunset. But as Ethan was escorted to private chambers, he noticed unusual activity in the palace corridors. Small groups of younger nobles huddled in intense conversation, their voices too low to catch. Something was happening beneath the formal proceedings. His suspicions were confirmed when both sisters arrived at his quarters within minutes of each other, their usual diplomatic composure cracking under stress. "We need to talk," Kira said without preamble. "All of us now." "The political situation has evolved," Mira added, her scholarly calm strained. "There are factors the council didn't mention." They settled in a private alcove, the living walls automatically adjusting to provide acoustic privacy. Kira spoke first, her warrior's directness cutting through diplomatic niceties. "3 houses are threatening secession if I'm chosen. They claim House Solwind will militarize the Empire beyond recognition." Her violet eyes flashed with frustration. "They're not entirely wrong. My supporters expect aggressive expansion." Mira nodded grimly. "And 4 houses will withdraw from the trade consortium if I become Empress. They believe House Nightfall will make us weak, too focused on negotiation when strength is needed." She gestured helplessly. "They're also not entirely wrong. My supporters expect pacifist policies. So either choice triggers civil war," Ethan concluded, feeling the trap closing around them. "Not civil war," Kira corrected. "Dissolution. The Empire fragments into competing factions, each trying to claim legitimacy. The peace you helped broker during the Zerion conflict becomes meaningless." Ethan stood and began pacing, his mind racing through alternatives. "What about the younger nobles I saw in the corridors? They seemed conspiratorial." The sisters exchanged another of their meaningful looks. Mira spoke carefully. "They've been talking about change, about whether traditions that made sense 3 millennia ago still serve the Empire's needs. Some of them know about our collaboration," Kira added. "They've seen the preliminary plans for our joint programs. They're beginning to question why 2 brilliant leaders should be forced into opposition instead of cooperation." "Joint programs," Ethan repeated, understanding dawning. "You've been planning this for longer than you admitted." Mira's cheeks flushed, slightly. "Since the war ended, we realized that the coming peace would require both military strength and diplomatic finesse. Neither of us alone possesses everything the Empire needs. But together?" Kira's smile held genuine warmth as she looked at her sister. "Together, we could create something unprecedented." Ethan sat back down, studying their faces. "And me? Where do I fit into these plans?" "You're the bridge," Mira said simply. "The outsider who earned respect from both military and diplomatic factions. The human who proved that different species can work together as equals. The man we both fell in love with," Kira added with characteristic bluntness. "Who somehow managed to fall in love with both of us without betraying either." The words hung in the air like a confession and a challenge. Ethan felt his heart racing as he looked between them. 2 extraordinary women who had somehow found a way to love each other as well as him. "What are you proposing?" he asked quietly. "A new model," Mira said, leaning forward with the intensity she brought to diplomatic negotiations. "Co-empresses, joint rule. Your marriage to both of us legitimizes the unprecedented arrangement. The ancient laws say 1 bride, 1 empress," Kira continued. "But they don't explicitly forbid multiple concurrent marriages if both brides share the throne equally." Ethan stared at them. "You're talking about revolution disguised as legal interpretation." "We're talking about evolution," Mira corrected. "The Empire's needs have changed. The laws should change with them." "And us?" Ethan asked. "What about our personal feelings in all this political maneuvering?" Kira moved closer, taking his hand. "My feelings for you haven't changed since that bunker. If anything, they've grown stronger." Mira took his other hand. "And mine since Kepler Station. But I've also grown to love my sister again, properly, for the first time since childhood. We don't want to lose each other, and we don't want to lose you. The question," Kira said, her violet eyes intense, "is whether you're brave enough to help us change history." Outside, the sun was reaching its zenith. In a few hours, the council would expect his decision. But as Ethan sat between the two women, who had captured his heart, he realized the choice was becoming clear, not between them but with them. "Tell me more about these joint programs," he said, and saw hope flare in both their eyes. The revolution was about to begin. The sunset ceremony should have been simple. Ethan would speak a name and the future would be decided. Instead, the great hall buzzed with unprecedented tension as rumors of his unconventional decisions spread through the assembled nobility. "Chancellor," Vorik called for order, his silver eyes reflecting concern. "Captain Cross, the Empire awaits your choice. Which princess shall become your bride and our empress?" Ethan stood before the eternal seat, feeling the weight of history pressing down on him. Both sisters sat in their designated sections, maintaining formal composure while their eyes held a mixture of hope and terror. "Honored Council," Ethan began, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber, "I have studied your laws extensively. The right of unification was created to prevent civil war through decisive leadership. But I submit that the current crisis requires not division, but unity." Murmurs rippled through the assembled nobles. Lord Commander Thane shifted uncomfortably, while Lady Diplomat Sarah leaned forward with interest. "The Empire faces challenges that demand both military strength and diplomatic wisdom," Ethan continued. "House Solwyn's warrior tradition and House Nightfall's scholarly achievements are not opposing forces. They are complementary strengths." Chancellor Vorik interrupted. "Captain, the law is clear. You must choose one bride, one empress. The other faces exile." "The law states one bride, one empress," Ethan replied, his heart pounding. "But it doesn't forbid multiple concurrent unions if both brides share imperial authority equally." The hall erupted in shocked voices. Some nobles rose in outrage while others leaned forward with fascination. Through the chaos, Ethan saw several younger representatives nodding approval, the conspiracy of progressive thinkers Kira and Mira had mentioned. "Impossible," Lord Commander Thane shouted. "Precedent demands single rule." "Precedent," called out Lady Sarah thoughtfully, "is not law. If the captain's interpretation serves the Empire's needs." Princess Kira rose from her section, her warriors bearing commanding attention. "If I may address the council." Without waiting for permission, she continued, "For months, my sister and I have been developing joint programs to strengthen the Empire. Military protection for diplomatic missions, cultural exchange between warrior and scholarly houses, united leadership for a divided galaxy." Princess Mira stood as well, her scholar's eloquence complementing her sister's directness. "The challenges facing our empire require both sword and scroll, both strength and wisdom. Captain Cross proposes not radical change but logical evolution." "This is preposterous," another noble shouted. "Marriage is sacred, rule is absolute." "Sacred, yes," Ethan agreed, stepping forward. "Which is why I cannot, will not, choose between two women I love equally. Will not condemn either to exile for the crime of being born to the wrong house." The admission of love sent another wave of reaction through the hall, but Ethan pressed on, his voice growing stronger. "I propose a triple union. I will marry both Princess Kira and Princess Mira. They will rule as co-empresses, each bringing their house's strengths to unified leadership. Together, we will build an empire based on cooperation rather than competition." Silence fell like a physical weight. Even the living walls seemed to dim, responding to the collective-held breath of hundreds of beings. Chancellor Vorik spoke carefully. "Such an arrangement has no precedent in 3 millennia of imperial history." "Then perhaps," called out a young voice from the progressive faction, "it's time to create new precedent." More voices joined the chorus, younger nobles who had grown up during the war, who had seen cooperation between species achieve what conquest never could. The debate raged for hours, legal scholars examining ancient texts while political factions negotiated behind crystal pillars. Finally, as the twin moons rose outside the great windows, Chancellor Vorik called for formal vote. "All in favor of accepting Captain Cross's proposal for triple union and co-imperial rule?" The count was closer than Ethan had dared hope. 137 in favor, 112 opposed, with 23 abstentions. Change by the narrowest possible margin. "The council has spoken," Vorik announced, his voice heavy with the weight of overturned tradition. "Prepare for unprecedented ceremony." 3 days later, the wedding ceremony blended human and Valdrian traditions in ways that had never been attempted. Ethan stood in formal diplomatic dress enhanced with Valdrian ceremonial elements. A coat that shifted color with his emotions, boots that drew power from the living ground beneath. Princess Kira approached from the left, wearing traditional, warrior's ceremonial armor transformed into bridal regalia. Silver plates that caught and reflected light like captured starfire. Her midnight hair braided with battle honors that now symbolized unity rather than conquest. Princess Mira approached, from the right, dressed in flowing scholar's robes that seemed to contain entire galaxies within their fabric, her golden hair adorned with crystalline ornaments that pulsed with soft light, each representing a diplomatic treaty she had negotiated. The ceremony itself was beautiful beyond words. Ancient vows were exchanged, modified to encompass 3 voices instead of 2. When they kissed, first Ethan and Kira, then Ethan and Mira, then all 3 together, the living palace itself responded, its walls blooming with colors that had never been seen before. "By the power of the eternal seat and the will of the Imperial Council," Chancellor Vorik declared, "I present their Imperial Majesties, Empress Kira, Empress Mira, and Emperor Consort Ethan. May their reign bring peace to the galaxy." Later, in their private chambers, the 3 of them sat together on a terrace overlooking the capital city, its bioluminescent spires painting the night in soft rainbows. Ethan held both women close, still amazed by how perfectly they fit together. "So," Kira said with amusement, "we've successfully overthrown 3,000 years of tradition, unified a fractured empire, and invented a new form of government. What do we do for our second week as rulers?" Mira laughed, the sound like crystal bells. "Well, there's still the matter of that Galactic Peace Conference, and the trade negotiations with the Centauri Federation, and the cultural exchange program with Earth. And," Ethan added, pressing a kiss to each of their temples, "figuring out how to rule an empire while being hopelessly in love with 2 incredible women." "I think," Kira said, snuggling closer, "we're going to manage just fine." As the twin moons set over Valdris Prime, 3 hearts beat in perfect harmony, and a new age began, built not on the ashes of broken hearts, but on the foundation of love that refused to accept impossible choices. In the distance, the city celebrated their revolutionary rulers, never knowing that the real revolution had happened in a small private moment when 3 people chose love over law and changed the galaxy forever. The end.